Hello, my name is Greg Andrus. I'm the Vice President with the Democratic Party of Evanston. So this is part of our video interview series that we've been doing with all the municipal candidates. Some of our longtime members remember, we typically have our endorsement meeting at the Unitarian Church where everybody gets together in a big crowd and we all vote to endorse people for elections. Obviously, we can't do that this time, so rather than have each candidate for 2 minutes on stage, you get them for 30 or 45 minutes here on Zoom. So just a reminder, if you're not a member yet, you can sign up for a membership on our website, either as a dues paying member, or if you prefer to volunteer at a couple of our events, just reach out to us and we can get you as a member through volunteerism. I'm joined today by Barb Cornu, who is the committee chair of our MAP, the Midwestern Alliance of Progressives Committee. And we're going to be asking some questions of Sebastian Nalls, who's running for mayor this cycle in Evanston. Sebastian, we like to start it off by giving people a minute or two to introduce themselves. So why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. Yes, I first off want to say thank you to DPOE for having me here in this interview. It's a great chance to converse with people, and under the current situation and with the COVID pandemic, this is the best that we can do. But I think it's an adequate way of getting our message across, and it gives an opportunity for individuals to see a broader picture of what we're all about, all these candidates. My family moved here in 2001. So I've lived here for my entire life. I went to Evanston Township High School. I'm currently a student at Purdue University, majoring in accounting and political science with a focus in international relations. And I've spent the last couple years working at the city of Evanston in the Parks and Recreation Department. So I'm fairly familiar with the inner workings of Evanston, as I spent the last 2 years in more of an administrative role during my time there. But I considered running, and I eventually decided to run because of the issues that I saw take place during my time working for the city of Evanston, and following some of the responses by the city during the summer, even through the death of George Floyd. And I thought that some of those responses by the city were inadequate. We have a lot of social inequities here in Evanston. And instead of just passing a resolution, we need to come together and actually make meaningful change and fix some of our policies here in Evanston, take a comprehensive look at policies that we've had in place for decades and since the inception of Evanston itself. So I hope to bring a new, progressive, young voice to this conversation and bring forth ideas that may not have been talked about before.
All right, thank you very much. Barb, do you want to get started with the first questions here?
So Sebastian, thank you very much for that. We're with you all the way on most everything you said there. How do you understand the mayor's role in city government, and how would you provide leadership to the city council?
So since the city of Evanston's municipal government is set up more so in a city manager, city council role, where both the city manager and city council hold a majority of the hard power, we often see that the mayor's duties and the mayor's responsibilities are often up to the individual who's actually running for office and eventually becomes the mayor. So I see the mayor as being an advocate for residents and representing the entirety of Evanston. So since the beginning of my campaign, I've promised to hold weekly town hall meetings, and I think that those are essential to not only fostering a healthy relationship between city and residents, but it's just all in all, it's the correct thing to do in terms of being a public servant. So that's one thing that I believe is the role of mayor, and working with numerous parties that may not necessarily get together and may not be fond of one another. We see that currently there's a large divide between residents and the current city council, and they oftentimes butt heads. And I've spent a fair share of time at city council meetings, listening and even partaking in public comments. And it often seems as if individuals are asking questions or bringing forth attention to issues that they think are important to them and other members of the community. and they're often overlooked. So I think it's the role of mayor to pay attention to those issues, bring them to light, bring direction to Evanston, and overall just be there for the community.
Thank you very much. So we solicited some questions of our members, and I have them organized into fairly broad categories according to the value statement that the Democratic Party of Evanston members voted for this last summer. So the first few are about our value of anti-racism, and several members have asked about equity. They wanted to ask, do you feel that the city does enough to view every decision through an equity lens? And do you have any training in racial justice and equity work?
So I think that I am a good candidate to answer this question, just figuring that I am a person of color. I've lived in here in Evanston for my entire life, and I've seen firsthand some of the repercussions from some of our policies that we've had in place. One of the core parts of racial justice that our campaign has put at the forefront of our discussions is our beach tokens. Now, beach tokens were implemented in 1931 with the sole intent of keeping people of color out of the beaches here in Evanston. And we still have them here today. And there are numerous policies that are similar to that are still in effect. So we need to take a comprehensive look at all Evanston policies and see if they have a negative impact of members of our community. So I think that's one of the forefront ideas that we need to take into consideration this election cycle, and we need to push on it. That also includes police reform, early child care programs, and our reparations program.
Thanks. One of our members had a question about whether or not the Custer Street Fair would be coming back. And I wanted to first ask you if you'll be bringing Custer Street Fair back, but also bring up an incident that happened at a recent Custer Street Fair with the vehicle marked Department of Homeland Security that was quite controversial. And I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that issue and what can be done to avoid that kind of incident in the future.
So yeah, since there's two parts to the question, the first of actually bringing back Custard Street Fair. I personally believe that Custard Street Fair was a staple of our community, and it may not necessarily have been profitable, but it's what makes Evanston a small town community. So leading discussions with residents and touching base and having those genuine conversations with all of these issues and not just this one, but asking those questions, is Custard Street Fair something that Evanston would like to see back? Would that bring Evanston closer together? Would that bring a small town feel to Evanston? And if that's what the residents of Evanston want, then I'm 100% for it. Now, in regards to the Homeland Security vehicle that was parked outside of the Custard Street Fair, while at ETHS, I had numerous friends and some of my peers that were Latinx, and they themselves always were under fear, especially if they knew somebody who was undocumented, of repercussions from Homeland Security or ICE coming into Evanston and possibly taking away their family or loved ones. And I think we need to have that meaningful conversation, especially with city staff, if that's something that we as Evanstonians necessarily believe in. And quite frankly, I don't think that aligns with our morals. And it has no business, frankly, being at the Custard Street Fair. If it's a question about public safety and security, then we need to have that conversation. But quite frankly, I think Homeland Security is over the top and quite frankly redundant in that situation.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is in the area of integrity, accountability, and transparency. These are very important things to hopefully everyone in Evanston and definitely to the Democratic Party of Evanston. So as it stands currently, the mayor is responsible for appointing people to be on the police oversight board. What criteria will you use to make appointments, and are there any disqualifying criteria for you?
Certainly. I believe that we often see that there's sometimes conflict of interest when we ask the question, who is going to police the police? Now, so that those disqualifying factors would then be if you have family relations or you yourself have worked in law enforcement before. We see that can be that conflict of interest. So I would believe that would be one of our disqualifying factors. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we have individuals that have race and equity training, as well as public safety training that are involved in these commissions and these committees. Because it's important that we have oversight of our police department. Now, our campaign has been working on a police reform packet that is modeled after Evanston Fight for Black Lives packet. And I believe that they do a pretty good job of going through and listing what police oversight would look like. And I believe that we need to look at this from a top-down approach. So as soon as I were to come into office, I would try to put together a committee on police reform. And that involves bringing in individuals who are trained in racial bias and looking at the entire police department and seeing individually if officers meet the criteria and the morals that we believe that Evanston holds. And if officers do not meet these criteria, then they won't be a part of the department. And that also involves reallocation of police funding to the Evanston Parks and Recreation Department, the Evanston Community Development Department, as well as the Health and Human Services Department. And with those, creating programs that can meaningfully impact youth, especially early childcare programs and high school programs. And these programs put together will not only reduce crime, especially with youth in Evanston, but as well as increase education rates and close that education gap that we see here in Evanston between our white students and our students of color.
Oh, thank you. So regarding Freedom of Information Act, especially those made of the Evanston Police Department, have become quite contentious issues recently. So what do you believe the mayor's office can do to promote transparency and accountability on this issue, in this area?
Certainly. I believe that as a leader of the city council, because that's what the mayor is, and a leader of the city and putting the city in a direction that we see as progressive and moving into the future, I believe that we can set the overall tone of every department and every section of the city. We need to emphasize that we are here to serve the community and we are public servants and we need to be held accountable. And that includes FOIA requests. If an individual goes out and requests information, it's not that they think that we are doing a bad job or that they believe that we are some evil entity that is out to get them in the middle of the night. No, they're being responsible citizens. And it's the job of residents here to hold us accountable and make sure that we're doing our jobs. And sometimes we lose sight of what Evanston residents may necessarily want and need. So it's important that we have public comment, these discussions between aldermen and residents, the mayor and residents, so we foster a healthy relationship between the city of Evanston, its staff, and residents. So all in all, it really is setting the tone, especially when coming into office and saying, look, this is the way that we should conduct ourselves as public servants, and we should have an open door policy. A question is asked, and I'm going to answer the question to the best of my ability. If you need information, I'll assist you in getting that information. That's my job in the end of the day. It's not my job to hide any facts, and this is a public organization. It's a city, and it is up to every resident to have that level of accountability and hold us responsible for all the decisions that we make.
Well, thank you very much. So the next question I have here, before the legalization of marijuana, the vast majority of arrests for possession and sale in Evanston were made against Black and brown residents. Now that legalization has passed Illinois, only one marijuana dispensary has opened in Evanston, and it's owned and operated by a company based in California. How would you, as mayor, address this disparity?
Certainly. I believe that there are many issues with the current reparations program that residents have come to me and talked about and given input about. And one of those is the lack of funding to the reparations program. So I think it's of utmost importance that we try to bring in new dispensaries here in Evanston to provide more funding and more tax revenue for the reparations program. Now, the actual licensing and the system that's currently in place at the state level is something that we would have to work with our state officials on, and to try to get that adequately changed in order to be more equitable to people of color, because this is not just a disparity we've seen here in Evanston, but across the state and across the nation, that we see people of color are more often than not being stopped at a higher rate and receiving harsher sentencing for the same crime as somebody who's white, and especially when it comes to marijuana convictions. So I believe that the first step is working with our state officials to change that at the state level, to make it easier for people of color to get licenses. But at the same time, we need to do whatever that's possible on the city level, the local level, to go forth and try to expand the amount of dispensaries we have, and bring in some Black-owned dispensaries as well. And I think that this conversation can be tied to the overall reparations program itself. We see that the program currently really only benefits homeowners or individuals that are seeking to buy a home. But we see that doesn't apply to every single applicant or qualifying resident. So I believe that we should have options on the table for residents, and one of which could possibly contain an entrepreneurship grant, and providing those resources to residents of color so that they can come in and open up their own dispensary or their own business in Evanston to spur even more economic growth here. So I think those are just a few ways that we can address this issue as a whole.
Excellent. You had brought up reparations in that answer, which actually preempts my next question a little bit. But are there any other improvements you'd like to see to the reparations program that Evanston, made history by implementing or by passing, and is currently in the process of implementing?
I would say that community involvement is a large thing. I've seen that there are often some residents who feel that their input hasn't been necessarily received. And it's often hard for some individuals to meet at that time slot that the Reparations Committee currently meets at. So talking to community members and tailoring options for reparations to their wants and needs, because it shouldn't be, the city should not be coming forth and saying, this is exactly what we're going to give you for the wrongdoings that we have caused to you. That in and of itself doesn't even sound like the correct and equitable thing to do. So we need as much community input as we possibly can have with the Reparations Committee. And I personally believe that we should have multiple options for residents to choose from if they qualify for reparations, whether that's home ownership assistance that's currently in place, rental assistance, a direct check, or entrepreneurship grants, and leave that up for the individual qualifying applicants to actually choose from. Because in the end of the day, they are the ones who have been either directly or their family has been directly impacted by racist policies that have taken place in Evanston. So it shouldn't be up to the city of Evanston to dictate exactly how these individuals spend their money. We cause the pain and put forth the institutions that were in place throughout Evanston's history. So it's up to us to make that right. And that involves talking and meeting with community members and ensuring that all their wants and needs are met.
Thank you very much. Barb, I believe the next question is to you.
Really? So regarding clean air, clean water, and healthy communities, Evanston is obviously very committed to setting and has a climate neutral goal by 2015. Evanston's also started something called the Climate Action Resiliency Plan, and many of our members and folks are very involved with this. So what do you feel are the biggest challenges we face in reaching that goal of climate neutrality by 2050? Do you feel that the current goal is good enough, or would you like to see changes and a faster timetable?
I think that the problem with setting these goals is that we often here in Evanston kick the can down the road when it comes to fiscal policy. We work at it 1 year at a time, making do with our budget, often putting off projects or putting off implementing policies such as CARP. And I believe that the necessary first step into achieving carbon neutrality by 2050 is setting forth an economic plan for the next 10 years and marking exactly how much we need to achieve by when and how much it's going to cost. And obviously this doesn't mean making a 10-year budget for Evanston and following it to the tooth and nail, because projects come up, things need to be repaired, replaced, etc. But we should have some idea of what the next decade is going to look like here in Evanston, and we need to be fiscally responsible about it. So once I come into office, or if I were to come into office, I would work directly with the city manager's office to set forth an economic development plan for Evanston, and making sure that the qualifications of CARP are met on a yearly basis, that we're doing exactly what we need to do to facilitate positive climate action here in Evanston. Because overarching wise, climate change is a national issue and an international issue. But at the same time, we need to do our part here in Evanston. And there are things that we can do on a municipal level, whether that's phasing out vehicles that are inefficient when it comes to gas usage, or replacing them with electric vehicles, putting in solar panels on new projects, new building developments, or existing city buildings. And we just need to have those conversations and actually map out a plan and what that would look like here in the city of Evanston. So I believe those are the steps necessary that we need to take to achieve all the goals that we have laid out in CARP.
Thank you very much. So one of the other the key values that that the Democratic Party endorsed this last summer was an economic opportunity for all. So we have a couple of questions on that front and about the city budget. Even before the pandemic, it seemed as though downtown Evanston was full of empty storefronts. What do you believe can be done to promote development in a way that prioritizes small businesses and local ownership?
I think that the first step that's necessary to do is sitting down with small business owners and having meaningful conversations about what their wants and needs are. After talking to a series of small business owners here in Evanston, they felt as if the previous administration never really reached out to them to see what they needed in order to be successful here in Evanston. So establishing that trust between small business owners and the city government is essential, and showcasing that we are here for you and we're going to help you out in any way that we possibly can. So once we establish what small businesses actually need to be successful here in Evanston, we can implement those goals and try to bring in some more new businesses to fill those vacant storefronts. One of the suggestions that I brought to the Central Street Neighbors Association a couple nights ago was the closure of Sherman Avenue in the downtown area, and during the summer months from say 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. and closing that strip so small businesses can come in, set up tables outside. During my time at the Parks and Recreation Department, we actually threw concerts on a weekly basis throughout this past summer during the COVID pandemic. And they were socially distanced, and we had absolutely no issues with them. We had large turnout, and we had residents that were that we're grateful that we put on these events. And I think that we can have a similar philosophy when it comes to our downtown area. If we can throw concerts and bring residents down to the downtown Evanston area, small businesses that are up and coming and wanting to move into a more high profile area such as downtown, they'll see that as a beneficial part of the area. That I can set up a restaurant, or I can set up my jewelry shop, and during the summer months, I'll have individuals from all over Evanston coming in and seeing what my small business is about. And we can even have businesses from outside of the downtown area come in and open up small booths and showcase what their businesses are offering. And I, quite frankly, think that can be an excellent community experience and a cultural experience, where we have individuals who might not have met otherwise will be intertwining in the downtown area. And I think that is exactly what Evanston encompasses, as Evanston is extremely diverse. So if we bring together people that might not have been together under other circumstances, we capitalize on what Evanston is actually all about.
Thank you. We also had a question from one of our members who wanted to know, do you feel that Northwestern University contributes sufficiently to our community given its tax-exempt status?
Personally, I do not. Not Evanston. Northwestern takes up a sizable portion of Evanston. And we see that it's around 60% of Evanston is actually taxable land. And the rest consists of Northwestern, our two hospitals, as well as a number of churches, synagogues, places of worship that exist here in Evanston. And Northwestern is a nonprofit organization, and a nonprofit organization has to give charitable contributions to the community. And quite frankly, I believe that those charitable contributions should match up with the amount of area that Northwestern takes up. So I believe that there are two options to go about holding Northwestern accountable, that they are paying their fair share in the community. One of which would be looking at other communities of comparable size to Evanston and that have a private university, and seeing how much that private university actually contributes to the community. And the second way would be to go through and look at all of the land that Northwestern currently resides in, and calculating what the quote unquote lost property tax revenue would be with them being there. And that can be our minimum baseline in negotiations on how much Northwestern should actually contribute to the community. And these negotiations will ultimately be long and tedious, but it's definitely something that needs to happen in order for Evanston to be economically sound. And I believe that these negotiations should consist of elected officials, city staff, Northwestern administration, Northwestern students especially, and residents of Evanston as a whole. We often forget about Northwestern students that they are a part of our community as well. And they may not be permanent residents, but we also need to make sure that this is a home away from home for many of them. There's so much talent that comes out of Northwestern. It's one of the top universities in the nation. And we should be trying to capture those resources that are coming out of Northwestern. We want those students to come stay here in Evanston, to come raise a family here in Evanston, to bring their talents with them and all their unique experiences. So including them in the negotiating process is definitely something that I would try to achieve too. But overall, I believe that this is a necessary step in order to balance our budget and make sure that we are just fiscally responsible as a whole here in Evanston.
All right, thank you very much. Barb, I believe the last question there is for you. Sorry, Barb, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Thank you. You muted me. That wasn't me. Anyway, all right. So we're talking about housing. Is that the last question? Great. All right. Despite the number of new residential units constructed in Evanston over the last few years, especially in high-rise developments approved by the City Council, housing costs in Evanston continue to rise. Do you feel that the inclusionary housing ordinance is doing enough to combat this? What solutions would you like to see implemented?
Definitely. Affordable housing is on the minds of many residents here in Evanston. We see that, first off, we need to define what affordable housing actually is. And the Department of Housing and Urban Development defines affordable housing as a living unit that can be obtained with 30% or less of a household's income. And currently, Evanston has slipped under the 20% mark and is considered at risk of being unaffordable. And 93% of Illinois is currently more affordable than Evanston is. So you mentioned the mandatory inclusionary housing. I believe that the first step to looking at that is closing the loopholes that are currently in mandatory inclusionary housing. And the next would be creating a community land trust to hold low-cost units in perpetuity, and then also ensuring that developers are not making affordable units the smallest units in a building. So I believe that these three steps are quite pivotal in making Evanston more affordable. But I also believe that we need to use a lot of the resources that we have here in Evanston in terms of our residents. There are many residents here that are qualified affordable housing experts, and involving them in the process and involving local organizations that have specialized in affordable housing and creating an affordable housing plan that in Evanston can be implemented and will in and of itself be a positive force. I believe that those are integral steps that we need to take in order to make Evanston more affordable overall. And it's quite frankly, it's a necessity. If we have senior residents who are unable to afford housing, we're quite frankly not doing what we're supposed to be doing as a community. We are one giant family here in Evanston. We work together through all of our problems, whether that was back in the recession of 2008 or the COVID pandemic now. We've seen that Evanston residents can be unified and work together towards a common goal. And I think affordable housing is one of those revolutionary issues that we have at the table right now, that we can and need to hold our city government accountable, to make sure that we are doing the most that we possibly can to facilitate affordable housing here in Evanston.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So at the end of each of these interviews, I like to open it up to any questions. If you're willing to stick around for a few minutes, I see we have some members who've joined us to watch. So for everybody who's tuned in right now to watch, if you want, you can ask a question of Sebastian. We have a few minutes here before I need to close this out and move on to the next one. Okay.
May I ask?
Oh yeah, go ahead, Barb.
It would be great if you shared with the audience and for the people watching this later on, either an email or a way to get in touch with you or learn more about your issues or help out or send suggestions or, just get involved. Is that appropriate if I ask?
Yeah, no, definitely. My website is www.sebastiannalls.com. I invite each and every one of you to reach out, give me a call, email, all that is in our website. You can leave a message on our website as well in our message box. I implore you to go and have conversations. I love to hear from residents in the community about what troubles them, what are positive things that they see in the community, what are negative things that they see in the community. So then in the end of the day, I can advocate for those positions and I can try to do the best that I possibly can to be a leader here in Evanston, be an advocate for the community. So you can go to our website, again, www.sebastiannalls.com, and you can learn more about us on there, as well as we should have some media links on there as well to other forums and forums to come in the coming weeks.
Thank you so much for joining us. So
Course.
just a reminder here at the end, if you're not a member yet, you can become a member of the Democratic Party of Evanston through our website. And then ballots will go out for our endorsement event on January 17th. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you so much, Sebastian, for coming in and answering some questions this afternoon. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciated it.